I was listening to this little girl chanting.
Namaste. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. दिवि भूमौ तथा काशे बहिरन्तश्च मे विभुः यो विभात्यवभासात्मा तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The idea presented today, Chittam Chidahamete Echa Lokaha Chiditi Sangraha. That means to say, all these worlds are nothing but made out of pure consciousness. And the same pure consciousness is what you and me are also made out of. There is nothing which can be another source of creation. There's only one source of creation. That's what the pure consciousness is. The way that it is Shukra, the sage Shukra says to Bali, and it is taken from Yoga Vasishta. It is from the story of Bali, page 129 it comes. But let's go to the idea that what brings us to this kind of a concept in this part of Bali's story. He brings about another beautiful paradigm here, and that is in the earlier sutra that is given. Raja cha Bhagavan Atma mantri mantro mano bhavet vishayat pratyanasthasyat yuktihi manaso jaye. Liberation, the destroyer of all the pains and sorrow, has been declared by you, the name of a region, area, by me. The king is the self within for this particular region, for this area, or for this kingdom, what you call it as. The king, the master of that is the divine self. There's only the divine self that is there. And the wise minister is the mind. Mind is the minister. And the means for the conquest of the mind would be indifference towards objects of the senses. The senses are there, objects are there, and we continue to flow, continue to move. And the movement is what is the significance of this particular creation. And this is what is given in the 19th and 20th sutras in this Bali's story, the story of Bali. Here, the king Bali and his father is Virochana, and the instructions of the Virochana or the father is given to start with. And let's look into what are the instructions that is given at the page 126 here. Asmritam yat pure prushthe maya tato Virochana. Oh, then he remembers that my father Virochana has asked, formerly has been remembered by me. So he had discussions earlier with Virochana, and that discussion has given rise to this particular idea. Pitaha sakala dukkhanam sukhanam chapi sarvashaha yatra sarve brahma shantaha kosau simanta ucchatam. Oh father, tell me, what is the boundary line or the utmost limit of all pains and also the pleasures of all sides, where all delusion, confusions are alleviated or extinguished. So, excuse me, we are constantly looking at where the dukkha ends, and then we are also looking for where the sukha does not end, it continues, and we are afraid the sukha might end. So this is the kind of conflict that we have. So he says that, tell me, what is the boundary line, utmost limit of all the pains and pleasures on all sides of all these delusions, confusions are alleviated, extinguished. Pain and pleasure are not two separate things. They are the same. Only thing is from looking at from different angle. Something which comes to you, it gives you pleasure. Something goes away, it gives you pain. But the same way, something comes to you, gives you pain, and then the same thing goes away, gives you the pleasure, freedom from the pain. So this is what is oscillating between these two, the two pairs of opposite, pleasure and pain. We are continuously oscillating between these two things that's going on. So therefore, basically, if you would like to leave one, the other also goes away. Both these things are together that you can eliminate. That's what is another very important aspect, is that both pleasure and pain and the comfort and the relief and suffering, both these things are in the mind, and we can get very easily used to something what is called as discomfort, but then it is no more a discomfort. To start with, it may be discomfort, but over a period of time, it's no more a discomfort. The same way, the pleasure that is there in the beginning that we could think of, but over a period of time, the same pleasure will not be any more pleasure, because it's a routine kind of a thing, a normal thing, we get used to it. Once we get used to it, now that we look for something different, we look for different. That was actually the way that the Bali's suffering started. He had everything, but then he was having a complaint that how long this continues and then how long this has to be there. Ityukto Bhagavan Praha Seemantostihi Tadrushaha Yatra Prithvi Nanakasham Sagara Nachachadriyaha Navanani Natirthani Nanadyo Saramsicha Samuhak Sumuhan Eka Evasti Tatraja Mahidyutihi. Thus addressed, the revered father said, indeed, there is such a boundary, the limit, where there is no earth, there is no sky, no ocean, and no mountains, no forests, no holy places, no rivers, no lakes. There is only one king, and there of the great strength, eminence, and the great splendor. Bali is in that state where absolutely he is a name, a very, and one sense is a very satisfied kind of a position where we have everything. It means to say that there is no boundaries. The boundary is basically you change from one to the other, you shift from one to the other. And then he says that there is no question of any earth or sky or ocean or anything like that. These are not the idea is that these are not the boundaries actually. These are all various stages that are going through. And this kingdom has all those things, and then you are passing all this. Like for example, if you look at yourself, that if you look at the leaf level, when you are there, the leaf has a boundary, and then there is another leaf which comes, which is not this, which is a different leaf. And then you come to there are some branches, there are some stem, there is something like that. You can see all these things which are like separate individual kind of things. Each one has its own boundary. But the moment that you look at the whole tree as one whole thing, then where are the question of boundaries? All these things merge into that. The same way, when you look at this region as one simple unit, when you rise above to that level, not to see the boundary, but to see that one as a single unit, which has got all these components that are there within. And once you look at that component as all these things belong to one component, then where is the question of boundaries? There is nothing that exists as boundaries. And this is what is the way that a king looks at the whole thing. The king's perception is that. Very often what happens is we get caught up in the small little boundaries, and we would like to draw the boundaries, and also not only we draw the boundaries, but we specify that this is this and this is not that. Why it happens like that? Because that's the character of our senses. Our senses themselves create the boundaries. Senses themselves are the boundaries. Like, for example, what you hear is through the ears, and what you see is through the eyes. There itself, that our perception has been fixed in a boundary down, excuse me, the boundary between what you see and what you hear. So, and these are all the ways that we have these boundaries that are there. And then सर्वकर्तु सर्वगः सर्वं सचतूष्णीं अवस्थितः तेन संकल्पितो मंत्री सर्वतो मंत्रणे मुखः अघटं घटयात्याशु घटं विघटयत्पतिः भोक्तुं किंचित् न शक्नोमि न च आनाति kinchana. All doing, all pervading, and all he is settled silently. All provisions by him, the minister, intent on advising all around, brings about quickly what has been happening and removed what has occurred. He is not able to enjoy everything, nor does he know anything. Now, the king separates himself from the minister, and the minister is somebody who is organizing all those things, he is taking care of everything, and therefore, the king राजार्थ केवलम सर्वम करोष्यज्ञोपि संसदाः राजाः केवलमेकान्तः स्वस्थः एवावतिष्ठते तिष्ठतः. And then he does everything only for the sake of the minister is somebody who does everything for the sake of king, and then he does everything for the sake of king always, though remaining ignorant. The king remains alone, the lonely palace quite at ease. This analogy is the way that in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says that Pashyan Shrunman Sprishan Jigran Ashnan Gachan Swapan Srashan Pralapan Visrujan Grunan Inmishan Nimishan Napi Indriyan Irdhyadeshu Vartanta iti Bhavayan. A very lofty idea he brings about, that hands are doing their work, eyes are doing their work, ears are doing their work. The stomach is doing the work of digestion. All these things are going on their own. And then you are somebody behind all those things, not being attached by that. And all these things are carried by, being done by one very efficient minister that is there behind. And that's what is the mind. Mind does all kind of things, and then mind is managing the things. But you be an observer behind this, a sakshi behind this, and you are not involved in this. Kev Raja Kevalam Ekante. That means to say, absolutely there is no second, and then you are totally alone by yourself. Behind all these things, you are not even involving in the work. There are two different aspects that are there. One is the aspect that is one who is doing all the activities, and another who is witnessing all these activities. Both these things are there within us. Whenever you are doing any activities, just observe yourself. You can see that the senses are doing the activities fine. Eyes are seeing, ears are doing all those kind of things. But there is somebody behind that who is making to do all those things, and that's what we see, that our mind gets involved in that. Mind is making things to do it. Mind is advising the eyes and ears, etc., do all kinds of things that's happening. But if you carefully watch, that behind the mind, there is another person who is just watching this whole thing that's happening, watching these things that are going on. Many times we observe that, particularly when you are in difficult situation, when you are really going through hardship. After some time that you are tired of that hardship, what happens is you just sit down and keep watching, and then the hardship is going on outside of you, and you are only observer. And this observer that is there within you, who is not involved in all these activities, are supposed to be the way that you are the king. And this is what Rajartham Kevalam Sarvam. He is the Kevala. He is somebody who is there behind it, only for the sake of king always, and then all other things the minister is doing. Sansada Raja Kevalam Ekante Swastha Eva Evavatishthati. It's a very unique way of explaining about these things, that these activities are going on, particularly when you see that the cells are doing their functioning, the digestion activity is going on, and various functions that are there in the body, that they are going on. Whether you are there or not, those things are going on irrespective of the king. They do not know that the king is sitting there or you are sitting there. That's one of the reasons. And this can be observed very beautifully. When you look at somebody who died, that means to say the person is no more. But then, even though the person is no more, you can see that the activity is going on. Like, for example, the dead person, you can see that hair will be still growing, circulation is still, peripheral activity is something which is going on. Though slowly this whole thing is slowing down and quietening down and also becoming cold, but behind that all these activities are still going on. You can see that. That means to say that those people that who are working behind it, they do not know that the master is not there. You are not there. Similarly, they say that when they see that, then you cut off the head of the chicken, and chicken continues to run, and the legs are functioning and the body is functioning and then running around. Only thing is the head is not there, cannot see. Very bizarre way, and then it will be running around. So that means activities are going on. So those activities are going on, whether you are there or not, whether king is there or not. When you know that these activities are going on without even the presence of the king, why can't king be there as just an observer, as an behind it? So this is what is the way that you can observe. You can see that you be freed from that, which means to say all these boundaries, like the way that your eyes and ears, etc., not only that, the boundaries that they create, all these things do not exist once you identify yourself with the king. That means you rise above all these boundaries, and then you are just being a sakshi. You are just being an observer. Now, this sakshi, that means to say you be the eyes or one who is observing. It's a very important thing in the word that sakshi is a witness, that we say. But in English, when we say witness, witness is always for somebody who is not connected with anything that is there in the world outside, but he is observing. Like, for example, if I say that yes, I have seen somebody murdering somebody damaging something, and somebody making some comment and this and that, I observe that. This is what court wants. Court wants you to be the outside of it. Whereas if I say that, look, I have not damaged anything because I observed, I was the observer. They said, no, you can't be an observer for yourself. Somebody else should be observer. But in Vedanta, but in the way that in philosophy is all about, you can only be the sakshi for yourself. You can't be the sakshi for others. You can only be a witness for yourself. You cannot be a witness for others. But very often what happens is that the moment that we think of being an observer, a sakshi, a witness, then we would like to witness the world outside, and we will pass on comments about the others. And we think of what all the others are doing, others are behaving. Now you try to judge from your point of view them, but actually, are you really watching them, observing them? You are an observer, are you observing them? You can't, because basically what you only see is that what is the periphery that is there, what is not there inside. And you are not just a periphery, you are something very deep inside. So in the Vedanta, you can only be an observer for yourself and not anybody else. And that observer is the divinity that's there within us. This is what is Natatra Balavan Mantri Devasuraganaihi Sutaha Nalakshya Gudatair Vyapi Sarvaihi Akramyate Manak. Son, there is a minister possessed of the strength, is not conquered or overcome even a little, by all these troops of demigods collected by hundreds of thousands. Sorry. If he is a true minister, if he is a true person who is involved in doing these things, he is not possessed by the troops of demigods and demons collected by hundreds of thousands. That means all these forces that are there, all these things that are there around, they don't influence him. The very idea is that, in the first place, that our senses are influenced by the objective world outside. Our senses have got these two things. One is that object outside, and then the mind that is there at the background of it, and our eyes and ears and all that. It looks like that the mind is running behind that, but actually if you closely look at it, object is drawing the senses behind it. So you see the object and then mind goes behind it, and mind is drawn by that, and the senses are drawn by that. Whereas a true minister is somebody, or the true mind is something who is not influenced by the world outside. This is the first step of growth, first level of growth, that you see that we are the masters of ourselves. The outside world is not the master. So this is the first step that we need to do. That am I going to the object outside? Is it because just that I need that object, or is it something like I am really pulled by the object that is there outside? We are free from that. Prabhunaivatu jayeyam yuktya siyasita vashanam. But he is conquered by the Lord, the King. He comes under control by the expedient. Now this mind, that means to say the king, the minister, what he said, is somebody who is under the control of the king. The king is the one that is dictating, who is telling like that. That means to say it is this observer who is there behind. It is he who is the master, and it is he who is the ruler of the whole thing, and not the objective world outside. Very evident in the case, this example is very beautiful in the sense that though many times that the king is not there, all those things are not there, everybody does the work the way that it has to be done. That means to say the invisible king is the discipliner, and that discipline is there behind it. And this is a very beautiful concept in the sense that you have and this can only be done by a benevolent king, a king who is really very compassionate to the people. They follow it, which means basically it is the compassion, it is the respect, it is the, and then you gain because of which that you do it. And you cannot abuse yourself just because that king is not there behind it. You can't even see the king. So this way that deshanamna mayo tyakte mokshaha sakala dukkha raja cha bhagavannatma mantri prajne manobhavet vishayan pratyanastha syat yukta hi manaso jaye. Now he explains whatever that I said in this particular sutra. Liberation, that means to say moksha is the liberation, and is the free from all the pains, all the sorrows. Mokshartha deshanamna mayo sakala dukkha, the destroyer of all pain, sorrows, has been declared by the name of the country, the region by me. That means to say this whole Puri, that means the human being. We are the human being. It is the whole like a kingdom. In fact, there are so many cells, there are so many activities that's going on, and so many things that are happening. Independently they are happening. There are so many activities going on. This is what is region or the kingdom that is the way that Vedanta many times that declares human being to be a city. And there is so much of an organization that's going on inside. There's digestion going on, there's circulation going on, supply of food, supply of material, and then all those things which are going on. It's like a huge city that's going on. Therefore, in Sanskrit, what we call it as Puri, from that, somebody who is behind that is supposed to be Purusha. Isha, Puri Ishaha Purushaha. That means he is the Lord of this particular kingdom. And that Purusha is not outside, it's there deep inside. And it is his kingdom. And that's what is here. So Deshanamna Mayokta Jaste Mokshaha Sakala Dukkhaha. From the freedom from all the dukkha that is there. Raja cha Bhagavan Atma. So Raja is the Atma, that means to say what we call it as Purusha. He is the king. And Mantri Prajno Mano Bhavet. That means the intelligence and activity that is done by the mind with all the intelligence and everything. He is the Mantri. It's a beautiful concept in the sense that God is like a catalyst. This is what we say. The presence of catalyst is necessary for any activity. Like for example, if you take water, oxygen and hydrogen put together becomes water. But then if you just put oxygen and hydrogen together, it will not become a water. It requires an electricity behind it. But electricity is not creating water. Electricity is not participating in the water. The presence of electricity is something which makes that water possible. Because when you take out that water again, in the water you don't find electricity there as a third ingredient. You only find water, hydrogen and oxygen as ingredients. Electricity is not an ingredient, it is not there. But then without that it cannot be possible. You have to have the presence of electricity. In the presence of that, then the activity happens. He doesn't do anything. It's like the way that in a classroom that there are several, in a kindergarten or primary school classroom, there are so many children, and all the children, they are making noise and then shouting and this and that going on. Suddenly the teacher walks in. The moment the teacher walks in, everybody becomes quiet. Everybody becomes silent. Sit down, and then they start doing their work. Not that teacher is doing anything for making them to do that, but the very presence of the teacher is something makes them to do what they are doing. In fact, this the right way, a right kind of a teacher, right capacity of a teacher is somebody, in his presence the things will happen. He will not be the doer, but he is just being there. If he becomes the doer, then he loses his importance. If he becomes a doer, he is doing everything. Then the others will take him for granted. He should not be like that. I remember when we were working in an engineering company, and there we had a boss, and then in a workshop that was, there were a lot of people doing a lot of things that are there. And the moment that information comes, the boss is walking in, then everybody is doing all the works, and then everything becomes quiet. He was very effective, and he was doing very well, and everything was going on all right. But then there was one person who was there in that group, younger, junior fellow, and he said, look, only people work when the boss comes, otherwise they don't work, they do all kinds of work is going on in any case, may not be at that efficiency, but then it's going on. Then he was promoted to that boss position. When he was promoted to boss position, what he did was he put his seat amidst all those workers who are working, thinking that in his presence things will become improved. But the moment he came there, nobody started listening to him, because for every moment that he was involved, it's very important management lesson is that a lower level management is the one that is doing, but the upper level management, if they do not get on to the doing kind of things, their very presence should be able to make the things to happen. So therefore they say, Raja cha Bhagavan Atma, that means the king is like the Atman, and Mantri Prajno Mano Bhavet, intelligence and the brilliance and the planning, everything is by Mantri. In fact, that's what in Sanskrit, the Mantri, the word means that who is the intelligence and who is the capacity to organize the things, and then he is doing it. And Raja cannot be involved in that. Vishayan pratyanastha syat yuktihi manaso jaye. The king is the divine self, the wise minister is the mind, the means for the conquest of the mind would be indifference towards object senses. You don't get involved into the object and senses and all those things. Only the way that you will be successful is being indifferent. This is the idea of Vairagya. Vairagya is not rejecting that. See, one thing is that you are involved, and second thing is you reject. In both the cases, the object becomes important. In both the cases, the senses become important. I hate the senses, I love the senses, run behind the senses, or I hate the senses and therefore I punish the senses. In either case, that I have given importance to the senses. I hate the object or I love the object, I am running behind the object, running away from the object. In both the cases, I am running. And not only I am running, the object has become important. The only way that we could come out of objective idea is that you become indifferent. And when we say indifferent, that means to say deep inside you do not nurture any boundaries. You are free from all kinds of boundaries, and this is the way that we really have to organize ourselves. Chittasya bhago dvai bhagaha. Now, he gives us the methodology, he gives us a technique, how we manage this particular thing. Chittasya bhago do bhagehe, that means there are two parts of the mind, and let us fill up 2 quarters of the mind. 2 quarters of the mind. Shastrenam shastre do bhage shastrenaikam prapurayet guru shushrushaya chaikam avyutpannasya satkramaih. Let one fill up 2 quarters of the mind which is not perfected in the process in proceeding towards reality with enjoyment or in involvement in the work outside. 1 quarter with reflection on scripture, and the 1 quarter with the service of the spiritual teacher. Now, what happens is, for a person who is a sadhaka, he is still not involved in the world, he goes behind the world, he goes to the object outside, and also that he needs to have a teacher, or he needs to have somebody who can give him a guidance. And also there are scriptures, there are books, there is the world out around for you to observe, and all these things are there. So in the beginning, what has to happen is that 2 quarters of your mind is involved in the world outside, seeking the pleasure, seeking the pain, getting involved in the work. Normal person, what happens is 100% he gets involved in the work. But a sadhaka is somebody who takes only the 2 parts of it, gets involved in that. And 1 part is that he is going to go through the Shastra, and the 1 part is something in the form of Guru Sushrusha, and that's what is the 3rd part he says. 4th part he says, Guru Sushrushanam Chekam Avyaktannam Sasya Satkramaihi. The quarter is service, the spiritual teacher. Now let me explain this a little bit in the way that we always have somebody in front of us who is following, who is like the one who has reached that kind of a state where he is totally liberated, is totally free, but at the same time he is like us. We require that kind of a person so that we will be in that direction, going in the right direction, and we understand that the world, it is possible, because if that is possible for somebody else, he also is living like us, he also involves in the world like the way that we are involved. But at the same time, every time that we move ahead, we see that somebody is little more than I am. This is what is the difference between the guru idea and the teacher. The English word, the teacher, is that one teaches, but the guru is somebody who throws a light. And how do you throw a light? Is that you have a torchlight and you keep the torchlight in front of you in such a way that you can take 1 step ahead. You can take 2 steps ahead. And that light is thrown in front of you so that you can go ahead. Guru throws the light only that 1 or 2 steps so that you can move forward. And in what way he throws the light? Wherever that you are, whatever that you are, that you see that the Guru is a few steps ahead, so few steps ahead so that you can still hold on to his hand and you can move towards. Holding his hand means that basically a deep insight in your psychology that his presence gives you that assurance, that kind of a positivity, that a hope to move ahead. And that hope is something which is given by the teacher. The guru is that way helpful for us. But finally, who has to walk? You have to walk for yourself. It is like that, we say that sun comes all the way to you to throw light, and then you hold that light and keep walking ahead. Then your walking is necessary. You can avoid that steps that you take. Maybe small little steps, gentle steps that you take. But that taking steps is something which is very important for you. So this is the reason why he says that the teacher is somebody who is necessary. And he says only 1/4 of it. You know, it's also another, how does he give that particular support for us is the way he encourages us. Guru is somebody who does not find fault with you and try to discourage you. In fact, it's very important. Once it so happened that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and his group disciples were there and said that drinking is bad, drinking is horrible, drinking takes away your awareness, whatever that he said. He totally, a spiritual person is somebody who should not drink. Like that he said, very inspiring, very beautiful way that he said. After all, Ramakrishna, whatever he says, he makes it touch directly your heart. And then one of his students, Ramakrishna's students, was Keshav. And Keshav was habitual drinker. Every evening he has to drink. Then he heard that, and the moment that he heard that, immediately it really pricked his heart. He became very guilt of the whole thing. And then what happened was that he could not drink, he could not become all right, and then he was really suffering. And he went into all kinds of withdrawal symptoms and rigors in the body, and he could not tolerate that. Then he came to Ramakrishna and said, Ramakrishna can give permission for him to drink. Ramakrishna said, but then he heard that from Ramakrishna, then he said, I should not drink. Ramakrishna gave another simple idea saying that, okay, you continue to drink, doesn't matter. But whenever you drink, you say that the drink you take it, and whatever that you have done, all that effect of it, pass it on to me, so that I will take care of it. You don't worry about it, you drink. Immediately he thought that Ramakrishna has given him permission, so he was very happy. Now he can drink. So he went home, and then, the drinking is like a ritual for him, because now he said that Ramakrishna said, you offer it to me. So he kept the picture of Ramakrishna in front of him, made all the nice beautiful arrangement. Maybe that he has put a lamp and also put incense and all that, because it's a worship like thing. And then he opened the bottle and then served himself a drink. And he was about to drink. Suddenly when he was about to drink, then he looked into that glass. He found out that Ramakrishna's picture was there inside the glass. He started seeing. Suddenly it occurred to him like a shock. He said, I am drinking this and the effect will go to Ramakrishna. Wow, Thakur. At once what happened to him is he was so much into pain, into suffering. That is, this man never knew what is called as evil in his whole life. Never did anything which is not even an iota, not even a delta of something which is wrong. And then he always guided people in the right direction. He is more than saint itself, and such a person, and he will be affected by the evil that I drink today. Wow, I just cannot tolerate. I am prepared to die, but I cannot give this to happen to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He just could not drink. He just could not take it, not even a sip. And that was much more difficult than just simply not drinking. So this was much more difficult. So therefore, because when he went into that state, then he went all the way into all this kind of withdrawals and cramps in the body and all that. One who saw that, he said, this man is going to die. Only way that he will die now. So they didn't know, because he was a great person himself, actually, Keshav. And Ramakrishna, he didn't want they didn't want him to die. They came running to Ramakrishna. They brought him in that state, and Ramakrishna looked at him, and the way that he was, as if he has done the greatest sin, and even thinking of very thought of drinking, and then bringing that sin to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. That's what he expressed. How coolly Ramakrishna handled that situation is so wonderful. He smiled and said, hey, what a mad fellow you are. I told you you should not drink. You should not drink a liquor. But then I did not say that you should not take a medicine. And every medicine has something evil in that. But then medicine, you take it for the sake of recovering from the sickness. Now you are at a stage where drink is not a drink for you anymore. Drink is a medicine for you. Please, I will serve you. You take that. Then he gave a small little quantity so that he recovered from that. Then onwards, then Keshav, he said, okay, now let me take the drink like a medicine. Only that much of quantity so that I will come back to my normal life. Soon he came out of the drinking habit. All that worked as a medicine. This is a beautiful way that he came out of that objective dependence on that. So, what happens is that 2 portions of it you be in the world outside, 4 quarters of it, and then 1 quarter is basically that you are going through all the scriptures, Shastra, and the people who followed that, and then all the advices that are given in that. So all those things will help you to see that now you walk on this side, and on the other side that you have the guru, the teacher, and then you have respect for the teacher. When these 2 things are there outside, and half of it that you are involved in that, it will help you to see that you come out of it, the dependency on that. That kinchit vyutpatti yuktasya bhagam bhagaihi prapurayet guru shushushanam bhago bhagam shastrartha chintayah. Let him fill up 1 quarter of the mind which is endowed with this little proficiency, reality, with enjoyments, 2 quarters with service, the desire to hear the spiritual teacher, and 1 quarter reflection of the meaning of the scriptures. Now slowly what happens is that whatever that the guru giving the direction becomes much more important for you. That means to say you see more and more meaning in the guru, and then your faith in the guru, your shraddha in the guru, that brings you out. And then what happens is that your involvement in the world outside becomes only the 1 quarter of it, 1 part of it, but the rest of it more and more towards this. Shastra support is also 1 quarter, but then 2 quarters is what is the guru, so it guides you in that direction. In fact, the way that in Sanskrit, when we teacher is called as guru, but then the student is called as antevasi. Idea of antevasi is basically the guru is residing inside him. The guru is there residing. That means to say he is the seed of the guru that is there inside. And then tomorrow that guru manifests when the seed dies, the plant, the tree manifests. The same way, no more Sishya is there, he becomes like a guru himself. This is how the whole journey continues. He becomes himself the possessor of all that qualities that the guru had, so that the journey continues. Vyutpattim anuyayasya daubhagam pichetasaha puraye shastra vairagyam dav dhyana guru pujayaha. Let him fill up 2 quarters of the mind which has gone after the reality and the scriptures and passionless, and the other 2 quarters with meditation and worship of the guru, so that now he goes towards it. prajnaya cha vicharena samam atmavilokanam trushnam trushnasam tyagamevapi sada tivram samaharet. By discerning together with reflection, inquiry, and let him intensely collect the perception, awareness of the self, and also the renunciation of desires always. It is this awareness, as Ramakrishna put it, take the medicinal quantity. It is like the way maintain that awareness. This awareness is the one which is basically bringing you out of that. And then this awareness of the self and also the renunciation of desires always. You will free yourself from the objective world outside. You are not running away from the objective world is not the way that you can really come out of it. By the tool called as the awareness, by being the sakshi or the observer, that you come out of it. This is where essentially that Yoga Vasishta, the Jnana Vasishta, the method of Jnana Sadhana is more of an observation inside, developing an observer inside, bringing the transformation with the help of that observer inside. Idime kathitam purvam dishtyatyas samsrutam maya dishtya bodhopite chataha jata bhogeshu chariti dishtya shamasukam swacham vishamyam mritachalitam. Thus, that was narrated to me formerly. It has been remembered by me today by destiny. Yeah, I really remembered whatever that was taught to me by my father, Virochana, at that time. Also, knowledge is born to me by the good fortune. Once again, the knowledge of all these things that you hear and everything, it happens because of the divinity, the good fortune, and dissatisfaction from enjoyment has arisen. By good fortune, I enter into the passion of the pure joy, tranquil, cool like nectars. Now, Shukra remembers that. Shukra gives this idea. Koham tavat aham kim syat atmavalokinam pruchaya bhargavam shukram iti dhyana tamagatam bhargavam pujaya masa padabhivandana nadinam. Who am I really? Who is this I? Who should be this particular self? The I, that is what is the basic question. Who am I? That's what is the question of Nachiketa. That was the question of Ramana Maharshi. That was the question of all the rishis, all the sadhakas who went in the path of sadhana. Who am I? Who is this really that self? And thus shall I ask Shuka, the son of Bhrigu and the seer of the self, from which the contemplation he worships Shukra, who has come there by this Shukra, sweet and the like. Tataha tatra samahasinam gurum papracha daityar rashtra guru koham kimeti valoka itivada prabho. The king Bali, then he asked the preceptor, that is Shukra, his teacher, who was sitting there, Teacher, who am I? Who is this I? And what are these words? Lord, tell me this. Who am I? Please tell me. Then Shukra Vacha, the Shukra is the one who replies now, saying that Bahunatra kimuktena saram sankshepaye chunu chitvam chidahameti chalokaha chiditi sangraha. So he asked this question, Guru, koham kim iti? I am, what is this me and what is this whole world? Now, me, that is what is interacting with this world, or this is what is basically the sakshi that is there, and the world outside, whatever that is, all these things, ati lokaha, what is that? Tell me. And this is where Shukra replies to him, saying that Shukra Vacha, Shukra is a saint, and he quotes it, Bahunatra, about these various matters. What is the point in telling about all these things? And here the essence briefly, what is the essential aspect of it? What happens is that normally we these are the two different ways of approach towards the whole thing. One is that you try to go to analyze the objective world outside. When you try to analyze the objective world outside, there are so many variety of objects, and then each one of them you go to the origin of it. This is one way of looking at it. Then what is the use of that? What is the outcome of that? It goes eternally. Whereas bahunatra kimekte saram sankhepatah. Now I give the essence of all those things, and chittam chidahameti mete cha lokaha chititam sangraha. There is no way that you can separate yourself from the world outside. You are watching the world, but are you separate from the world? You are not separate from the world. You are also part of the world. And only thing is that you have some equipment through which that you are observing the world outside. Not only you are observing the world outside, if you look at it, there are other species who are also doing that. Like for example, that all the other animals who have also the capacity to observe, they are also observing the whole thing. Not only animals that are observing the world outside, but if you look at it, even the plants, they also have that ability to observe, ability to look at the world outside. Look at the way when the sun rises, sunflower also turns around the sun. You mean to say that sunflower is not observing the sun? Similarly, when this winter goes and the spring comes, are there not plants aware of the spring coming? Are they not just responding to that? Observing means basically responding. In their own level, at their own way, that they're also observing, they're also having all those things. So that means to say, in this whole nature, that there is everything is there, part of the nature. You are sitting outside and saying that for the nature, even the plant, even the sunflower, even the birds and animals and all that, they're also the nature that you call. But then they also have their individuality. That means to say, they all have individuality, you also have an individuality of your own. And then you think that you are very special here. But then only thing is that human being has a deeper faculty to observe the things that are there outside. Not that the nature has that ability to observe, ability to look at it. The nature also has. So therefore, basically, you are the part of the nature, but only different in this sense that you have greater ability to observe, and ideation is greater. That's what is the only thing. But then you are also the same part of the creation that is there in the world outside. So there, and what is that you have an ability to observe is basically all this mind, intellect, etc., all these things that are there within you. And behind that, a pure observer, that's what is basically Chit. And this Chit, this observer, is what you are. Chitvam chidahami mete. The same observer is the one which becomes, the same Brahman is the one which becomes this. It is capacity to become that. Lokaha chititi sangraha. Now, what is this world outside? What is this world? It's also made of pure consciousness, whatever that you are, the consciousness, pure consciousness. The same pure consciousness is this world is also all about. Only thing is that in this pure consciousness which became world, there are certain levels. No, it's all right. There are certain levels of manifestation of this consciousness, and that's what is the difference. Like for example, the highest degree of manifestation that you are, that's what is basically the consciousness, that pure consciousness that you have within you. But then you also have various degrees of lesser degrees of consciousness. Like for example, your mind has certain degree of consciousness. Your intellect has certain other degree of consciousness. Similarly, like that, your body. And there also, when you look at it, you see that the senses are different kind of consciousness, all those things. What are they? Are they different from the same consciousness there? Right, like the way that a stone, which does not have the least degree of freedom, is the way that you also have it. Your bone marrow, all these things are also the same thing which is becoming this in the form of degrees of consciousness that is there. So, chitvam chidahameti, that means to say, ahamete chidam, that means to say, we are nothing but, you are nothing but that consciousness. But lokacha chidati sangraha. It's nothing but a combination of various things that are there. Like the way that within you, that all these combinations are there, like earlier I said, that each is working on its own. You are so many 80 million cells that are there in the body, they're all working. And they're working, they don't even know what's what the other cell is doing, other activities going on. Your hands are working the way that hand cells are working the way that is like that. Your skin cells are working and the cells that are there creating the skin. Like that, there are several cells working in the several ways, and all that what is creating is what's happening within us. That's why it says that you look at yourself as one big universe, and this universe, various activities are going on. The same, and now whether the consciousness is there, awareness is there or not. As I said, that in a dead man also all those things are working. As long as the potential is there, it works. The same way here also, the whole, you are nothing but the a miniature structure, the whole Brahmanda that's there outside. And whatever the way the Brahmanda is going on, that's also going on within you. There are so many cells are dying and so many cells are taking birth, and then there's what is going on. And that's what in the Brahmanda also, in the whole world, in the whole creation itself, universe also, it's happening like that. In fact, it is said the scientist today agrees with this idea, saying that a star that you see in the sky, by the time the light from that star comes to you, and then you are able to see that star, the star would have undergone a decay in such a way that the star doesn't even exist. It doesn't stay there. So that means to say there is a constant decay, there's a constant rebirth, rearrangement, all these things going on in the universe. The same thing is going on within the universe, within you. You can't hold anything even for a moment. It's completely flowing. That's why a very beautiful way that Vedanta says about that, we are the doing aspect of it. We are the gati, that means to say movement. We are nothing but movement. And the movement is what is called as the creation. The creation, very effect of movement is. And what is that which is not gati or sthiti? Sthiti is only one thing, that's what is Brahman. And why is it called as Brahman? It's something which is everywhere-ness, and it's constantly expanding. That's what it is. That means to say, meaning of constantly expanding, it is not like the way, and the space-wise it is increasing, but the very simple idea is it doesn't have any boundary. The moment that you look for a boundary does not exist. Not having the boundary is what is called as Brahman. Any kind of boundary that you create is the creation. Iti nishchitya yamadaya vilokya dhiyodhaya swayamevatmanatmanam anantapadamapsitam. Taking hold of such conviction and pursue the self, being conscious by the self, the inner instrument of perception, in your own person with the shining intellect, you will attain to the eternal abode. Who can observe that? Who can watch this? You can only watch that as a gift, because that we are the observer, we are the sakshi. In fact, when you look at the children, the very beautiful thing is, the child, he does not have mind separate from the observer. His mind is also observer. There is no separate things. Like, for example, how do we say that? When we say a lie, we know that we are telling a lie. You might convince the whole world that you are telling the truth, but you cannot convince yourself that you are telling a lie. Who knows that? There is a deep inside you. And that is the conscience that knows about it. But this conscience also has several layers. One layer of consciousness, that what we create is a very simple, local kind of moral conscience that we create. Like, for example, there are certain wrong things, I should not do it. So, and there are rules that I should not do something wrong. And then these things that are rules in the world outside, and then somebody requires to impose those rules. So what we try to do is that we take these rules into deeper layers of our conscience, our idea, our mind, and that tries to police us all the time. So therefore we do not do the wrong things. In fact, if police is required to set the world right, we don't have enough police to set the world right. In fact, a society is a moral society where least amount of police force is necessary. We have to create that kind of a thing within our mind, and therefore what happens is the rules are followed by the people themselves, because the rules, they own it, so that it, and then that means to say your inside will automatically come to it. And it's not a very big thing, it's not a very sophisticated thing, it's a very simple thing. Like, for example, we are trained to go on the left side of the road, is in India. Right side of the road, that when you go, that means to say wrong. So you see that most of the people consciously follow on the right side of the road. It's very simple. But there is a country where everybody goes on the right side of the road. There also people consciously follow right side of the road. In fact, I remember once in Florida, an Indian, he just came to India, from India, he came to USA, and then he had the local driving license. And then when he was driving, he so mechanically took the left side of the road and started telling me that, Raghuram, what is that all the vehicles are coming in the opposite direction? I said, no, you are going in the opposite direction, not the other vehicle. You are not in America, you are in America, you are not in India. Oh, suddenly he realized a mistake. Why did he do that? Because that deep inside, that we create a moral police within us, and the moral police guides us in that direction. It's good. It's very necessary that we create that kind of moral policing. Otherwise, this world would not be harmonious. So therefore, basically, there is certain moral police that we create. But then there is, apart from that, there is another policing also that we create, which is also supposed to be conscious. That's what is our religious policing. That means to say, you belong to a religion, you belong to a group, and that we follow that. It's very important. We need to follow that. It's like the way, when you look at a Hindu, particularly Orthodox Hindu, these days things have changed. But then real Orthodox Hindu is somebody, a lady, will have to put on a mark on the forehead. It's a very common thing. The moment that you get up, first thing is that you put on the mark on the forehead. And I've seen ladies that when they forgot to put on the mark on the forehead and they come out, what is that, you don't have the mark on that? They feel so guilty. Next 1 hour, half an hour, unless they get something to put on their forehead, they feel as if that they are doing something which is absolutely blasphemous. Beautiful that it is their moral policing is something which is there deep inside. Religion gives us that. Very beautiful, very nice. And we should respect that. It's not that everybody should have that. It's something which is, each religion has this kind of thing. And we have created that kind of thing all over the globe, just as something. Like that, there are several different layers of our conscience that is there. But these are all the local conscience that is there. But deep inside, we have one thing that is there, which is absolutely truth, absolute non-violence. What Patanjali gives us as the Satya, Ahimsa, they all belong to that conscience that is there deep inside. Even an animal does not kill unless until that there is need for food. Otherwise, that means Ahimsa is part of the nature. Ahimsa is the essence of the nature. It does not belong to a particular religion. It does not belong to any particular thing. It belongs to the conscience itself originally. Similarly, truth belongs to conscience. That's what I said. The child adheres to that truth 100%. For him, there is nothing like a truth which is a policing kind of a thing. This is what I say. A level of truth where there is no untruth behind it. There is no shadow of untruth behind it. That's what's the level of conscience. And then we all have that conscience within. And this is what is Chit. That's what is Brahman that's there within us. Chitvam chidahameti lokaha chiditi sangraha. That means to say, loka is also, the whole world is also nothing but a conglomeration, a gathering of all these things that are there. That's why we could say that Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Indian philosophy said everything is nothing but Brahman. That's the reason why Vivekananda said that the whole thing is, each soul is potentially divine. The divinity is there within each soul. Iti nischityamadaya vilokaya dhyodhyaya swayamevatmanatmanam anantapadamaspsati. Taking hold of such, it is not just only an intellectual thing, but is something that you feel inside, perceive the self. That's when you are directly in touch with the conscience or consciousness, self-consciousness by the self, inner instrument of perception. How can we say? It's also similar to the mind, but then it is not mind. Mind is all what is built in the world outside, but intellect is what is built by the world outside. But this is something which is beyond what I said is the moral, which is beyond the religious, which is beyond all other things. And then that is what is, you will remain to the eternal abode. When we understand that we are one with that, realize with that, such a person has no boundaries, is beyond all these boundaries. Eva mukta gate shukre sarvam chinmatramevahi iti bhavanaya dhyayan prashanta kalanagata ganaha dhatru dhyayamapnohi nirmana shantavasanaha babhuvavate deepabho balihi prapya mahapadaha. When Shukra departed, having said this, he said this, Bali, meditate on this concept. That's why he has given that idea that earlier, 1/4 you listen to the Guru, contemplate, meditate on that, 2/4 of it. That means to say, your whole mind should be occupied in this meditation while you are involving in the world outside, that everything is indeed pure consciousness. Now, that 1/4 he has given. In the beginning, what happened was that 1/4 is involved in the world outside, and 1/4 you are contemplating. Now, 1/4 you are listening to the scriptures that are there, and 1/4 is you are contemplating, and 1/4 is the teacher who is giving us these ideas. Slowly, what happened? This teacher is giving these ideas, and that 1/4 you are contemplating has also percolated into your activity. Therefore, half of it you are doing an activity, but at the same time that you are contemplating. Scriptures are there 1/4, and then 1/4 is a teacher. Now, this is where he brings about Bali walks out. Bali is there, given all these ideas. Shukra walks out. That means the teacher is gone. Then what happens is that all 4 quarters are nothing but that you are contemplating. You are in that particular idea. Whatever that you work you are doing, but in the background, this teaching is what is lingering behind you. And that you, Brahman that's there within you, is the one which elevates you. Nirvikalpa samadhane chiram stitva samuttitaha rajakaryayaka sarvani samyathat sayatha kramam. So such a person who is now filled with this nirvikalpa samadhane chiram stitva, being established in that state where he is pure self, and samuttitaha rajakaryani sarvani, such a person. Now let's go back to that example that has said that Brahman is the one who is there, the king, and the mantri, the minister, is the one who is organizing various things, and the praja that is there. The senses are the functioning to all those things that are going on in that. Once you are established in that, which means basically your senses are not guided by anybody else, and your senses are guided by the wisdom. And that's what is mantri, becomes the wisdom. And still behind all those wisdom behind all these senses, everything it is there, that the Brahman is sitting there in the form of Raja, the form of king. Yeshu yeshu pradesheshu mano majjate balavan tebhya samudhatya tadvitatve niyojayet. Whatever the place the mind sinks into, like a boy, let one attach to this truth, having lifted it up with such places. Such an extraordinary, wonderful idea that he brings about. In the case of this Bali, Chakravarti as a king, and he reached that nirvikalpa sthiti. And that's what is the idea. Shukra withdraws from that Bali, becomes free. As I said earlier, that Shukra is the teacher, Guru, and then Bali is the Antevasi. Now what happens? The moment that Shukra withdraws from there, then Bali himself, Antevasi, now he is that Brahman, he is one Atma Sthiti, he is in the Nirvikalpa Sthiti. So having said that, now this is a beautiful story of Bali, very parallel to whatever that Rama's position was. Bali was in the same kind of position. In the beginning he said that I have everything, a kingdom, but I am depressed. And that's where Bali's solution really helped Rama. And the same thing will help us also to cross over our depressed state, our states of melancholy. Having said that, let's go to the next story next week when we meet. That's what is the story of Prahlada. Another great story from our scriptures, and the story of Prahlada, which often talked about and which is very, very popular story. Let us see in what way that Yoga Vasishta deals with this story and get the message out of it. Many times what happens is that the stories of Bali or Prahlada, we look at from the story value and look at it. We did not go through much of the philosophy behind it. But as earlier I said, that Yoga Vasishta is a text purely focuses on the philosophy, brings about these stories to see that the philosophy is supported by these stories, and at the same time, and the stories philosophy has been emboldened, brought out for our sake. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.